But this year, it's interesting. This year, though, Keith, you're seeing it's unusually wetter for longer now, like into the season.
Yeah, it's interesting this year. That's probably what we'll say too early to really tell, because sometimes what we've seen is the spring is nice and wet.
Okay.
The grasses are growing nicely. I'm talking the native grasses, really, and the grasses that you'll find in the rangelands, in those ecosystems. They're growing very nicely. Temperatures are relatively cool, not doing too bad that way. But then all of a sudden, it just doesn't rain anymore, right?
Hmm.
And what you end up having is you've got a tremendous amount of fuel that has grown. The plants are so healthy, and they're standing up out there. But when that water gets more or less turned off, no more rainfall, you come about late July, early August, it is so ready to burn, and you get these dry thunderstorms that come through, very, very common, and it'll light up the place. And I mean, I talked to BLM folks. They said, hey, after that storm that went through last night, we had, 20 wildfire starts, 100 wildfire starts. A lot of them went out on their own, but not all of them,
Hmm. Hmm.
So we've seen this before, so it's too early to tell. If it stays wet, we'll be okay. The likelihood it's really going to stay wet throughout the whole summer is really bad. It's a poor likelihood, low probability for a place like southern Idaho.
Okay. And that's partially because I was looking back at the project. So that was partially what you guys did over at Develop kind of this semester or during the spring was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were working with the GAC. What's that? Geographic Advisory. I don't even remember what that stands for. But what they do is they will look at and assess wildfire risk. And one of the big drivers of wildfire risk in their models is live fuel moisture. So it's this whole idea that, okay, you got a lot of fuel out there, and now it's getting drier and drier and drier. In some regions of the United States, or let's say the Eastern Great Basin, it'll be drier than other parts of that same region. So what they will do, Forest Service, BLM, and so on and so forth, they'll actually proactively stage smoke jumpers or hotshot crews in these areas. If they say, look, that spot right over there has got a high wildfire risk because of very low live fuel moisture. We know that there's storms coming in, tonight or tomorrow or this weekend. So they'll actually bring people in so that they can respond quickly to wildfire starts and kind of get them under control and ultimately put them out.
How did you guys do that? Like, how do you assess which areas in the fuel have more or less moisture than the others?
Yeah, that's satellite remote sensing, right? So we used a number of different satellite platforms looking at the evapotranspiration products out of Modus, VIIRS system, and correlated that effectively with field observation. So the BLM, Forest Service people, they will go out every 2 weeks. They're already out at this time of the year, and they are collecting samples of these fuels, from grasses to fine fuels to larger fuels. They'll dry them. They'll weigh them when they first clip them, and then they'll what we call oven dry them, so they get kind of cooked for about 2 days at a very, very low temperature. What you're doing is you're driving off the moisture, driving off the water. Then they'll reweigh that plant, and the difference in weight is the difference that was lost because of water, and that difference then can be calculated as live fuel moisture of that plant, prior to drying. And they'll watch it. It goes down and down and down over the season. And right now it's probably 200-300% live fuel moisture, maybe even higher than that. Then the problem, though, is for this entire Eastern Great Basin, there's only about 150 samples taken across that entire area. Essentially, each sample has got to represent, what is it, like 1,000 acres? You know?
Wow. I mean, because yeah, how
Well,
big is the Eastern Basin area?
yeah, it's a large area. I want to say it's like 160,000 square kilometers or something like that, right?
Oh my gosh, that's great.
So,
That's like no
yeah,
samples at all.
they realize that just because we do a sample here and we show low or high live fuel moisture, that may not be true when we go over a little bit of a hill right over there. It may be more or less moist, right?
Right.
So we use their data, their field data, and the satellite imagery to make a spatially complete or continuous layer where that live fuel moisture would change over, areas and so on and so forth. It's not 100% accurate, no doubt about that. But I think it gives them a far better idea of what's going on out there on the landscape than they did with just a 150 some points.